2 days ago, you probably heard at CPAC in Washington, D.C., Steve Bannon, at the end of his speech, said, "Fight, fight, fight," and then he raised his arm in what looked very much like a Nazi salute.
The only way that they win is we retreat, and we're not going to retreat. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to quit. Fight, fight, fight.
Everyone is freaking out about this. As soon as this happened, I was not at CPAC. I did not see this. But as soon as it happened, I started getting text messages from people I know who know that I am friendly with Steve Bannon. I've been a recurring guest on his show for the last year. Been on the show probably about a dozen times. I also have a close personal friendship with him, which I'll talk about in a moment. And people started reaching out to me and saying, "Is this your friend? What's going on? Is Steve Bannon an anti-Semite?" And the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which ostensibly is the premier organization that monitors, tracks, and fights anti-Semitism. But the truth is, for many years already, the ADL has just become an arm of the progressive left and really does not represent authentic Jewish interests. But nevertheless, the ADL issued a statement where they said Steve Bannon's long and disturbing history of stoking anti-Semitism and hate, threatening violence, and empowering extremists is well known and well documented by the ADL and others. We are not surprised, but are concerned about the normalization of this behavior. They put that on the ADL X account. Let me be very clear. Anyone who thinks that Steve Bannon is an anti-Semite does not know Steve Bannon and certainly has never listened to a word the man has to say. Steve Bannon is a very well-known public figure. He does 4 hours a day of broadcasting of his War Room show. That's for 5 days a week, and then 2 more hours on Saturday. So 22 hours a week he is on the air. It's really easy to hear what Steve Bannon has to say, and I challenge anyone to listen to everything that Steve Bannon has ever said about Israel, about the Jewish people, and find me anything that sounds anti-Semitic. Not only that, Steve Bannon is also very much helpful to the Latino community, to the Black community. He's a great defender of the working classes in America. That's what he's concerned with. Steve Bannon is a great friend of Israel. That's why he has me on the show. Let me tell you a little bit more. Ever since October 7th and the war broke out, of course, the left abandoned Israel very quickly. And on the American right, there's kind of been a split. You really do have some anti-Israel voices on the American right, and some of them are problematic. On a recent episode of Steve Bannon's show, when he had me on, he asked me to respond to Tucker Carlson and to some other voices in the America First community who are not so favorable on Israel. But throughout this time, from October 7th till today, there has been no greater friend of the state of Israel in American media than Steve Bannon. I challenge you, once again, go back and listen to everything he has said since the beginning of the war about Israel, and you will find that he is at times seemingly even more pro-Israel than the Israeli government is. He is a great friend of the Jewish people. Now, he's also a person who is willing to say it like it is. So you may have seen this other clip from CPAC where someone stopped him in the hallway and asked him about his stance on Israel.
Israel is a partner of the United States, but people in Israel got to understand something. The number one enemy to the people in Israel are American Jews that do not support Israel and do not support MAGA. Okay, MAGA and the evangelical Christians and the traditional Catholics in this country have Israel's back. They have the Jews' back. The biggest single enemy to the Jewish people are not the Islamic supremacists. The biggest enemy you have is inside the wire. Progressive Jewish billionaires that are funding all this stuff. They are the number one enemy, and the people in Israel have to set that right. Because MAGA has your back, traditional Catholics have your back, and evangelical Christians have your back. We will always have the back of Israel. But I got to tell you, you have an enemy inside the wire.
In this clip, I admit, Steve might be overstating the case. I think that the genocidal jihadists in Tehran, who are backed by the Chinese Communist Party, are probably a greater enemy of Israel than the progressive left Jews. But his overall point, Steve's overall point in this clip, is 100% correct. The Reform Movement just put out a statement a couple days ago, a letter to all 100 senators calling on them to reject Mike Huckabee's appointment as ambassador to Israel. And what is their reason for calling on them to reject Mike Huckabee? What is their reason for saying that Huckabee should not be Israel's ambassador? Because Mike Huckabee does not support the national self-determination of the Palestinian people. Because Mike Huckabee is opposed to a Palestinian state, which everyone in Israel knows especially after October 7th, would just be a terror state, which is why the Knesset voted in July on a resolution opposing any call for a Palestinian state. The only Knesset members who voted against that resolution were 9 Arab Knesset members who are anti-Israel anyway. Not a single Jewish member of Knesset, left to right in Israel, was willing to stand up in support of a Palestinian state. And yet the reform movement in America, and recently the Jewish federations of North America, these left-wing establishment Jewish organizations have no problem calling for a Palestinian state, even when the Jewish population of Israel is opposed to it. So Steve Bannon is correct. The biggest enemy of the Jewish people, the greatest enemy of the Jewish people in America for sure, is the progressive left-wing establishment of the Jewish people. Those same people who call Steve Bannon an anti-Semite. And again, I cannot stress enough, Steve Bannon is a great friend of the Jewish people. He's a great lover of Israel. In fact, Steve Bannon gets criticized within the America First movement for being too pro-Israel. So I implore you, if you are skeptical about anything that I'm saying, I challenge you. Go find every clip you can find where Steve Bannon on his War Room show or anywhere else talks about Israel. You find me one place where Steve Bannon says anything that is anti-Israel. Steve Bannon is a great friend of the Jewish people. He tells it like it is. He's a defender of all of the values that American Christians and Israeli Jews share in common. He is a friend of Israel, plain and simple. Now, what was he doing with his arm there? I don't know. Maybe he was trolling some people. Maybe he was just waving and it came out a little strange. I have no idea what Steve was doing there. But focusing on that is missing the point. If we really care about Israel, if we really care about the well-being of the Jewish people, we should keep our eyes open and see who our actual friends are. The greatest friend in American media of Israel since October 7th has been none other than Stephen Bannon.